Hi, everybody. Welcome to video lecture 2.5. We're talking about other elasticities, the final two, cross price and income elasticity. Let's dive in. All right, the first elasticity is called cross price elasticity. And what it does is it compares or looks at the sensitivity of a change in quantity of one good based on the change in price of another good. Now, the only time a change in price of one good is going to impact the quantity of another good is if those two goods are related. And we know there are two related goods. We know that from all the way back in Unit 2 of AP Macroeconomics. We call those complementary and substitute goods. So really at the end of the day for this one, you're going to find a positive or negative value, which is a little bit different. So far we've been looking at absolute value, but now we're going to look at positive or negative. And that's going to indicate if a good or these two goods that we're looking at are substitutes or if they're complementaries. So the coefficient is positive, there's substitutes, right? If it's a positive number, it means they're both moving in the same direction. It's a substitute good. So whatever you have to do, remember that. I'm positive we have a substitute today. Substitutes are a positive because they never actually do what they're supposed to do. Now, that's not fair to substitutes, but I've had a couple that have come to class and substitute for me, and I come in the next day and it's clear nothing actually got done. So I don't know what's happening. It's probably you guys. You're really good. You get me off track. I can't imagine what it'd be like to be a substitute in your class. But anyways, whatever, positive, substitute, positive. Okay. If the coefficient is negative, if you have a positive and negative, in other words, if they're going in different directions, then they're going to be complementary goods. So negative complements, we call those insults. Negative complements. All right, there you go. So it's the percent change. And again, we use a positive or negative value on that, so up or down. And the quantity of product B, or whatever product is they're telling you has a change in quantity, over the percent change in price of product A. Notice something very important. We are still quantity over price. It's still Q over P. It's still QP, right? So as long as you remember that, you're going to be good on elasticity of demand, elasticity of supply, and cross price elasticity. Always quantity over price. The difference is we're taking the quantity of one good, looking at how sensitive it is to the change in price of another good, right? For example, let's say we have hot dogs, hamburgers, and hot dog buns. If the hot dog price increases by 20%, what impact is in that results in an impact in hamburgers? I guess I could have picked actually cooked burgers. Raw meat is a little disgusting, but I hear there are people that eat meat that way. They call it tartar. So I don't know, but there, there you have it. I guess raw hamburger patties. So the price of hot dogs went up by 20%. The quantity of hamburgers went up by 40%. But at the same time, the quantity of hot dogs went down by 40%. Can we find which of these are complements and which of these are substitutes? The answer is, of course, yes, we can. So let's take a look here. Let's say the change in quantity in product B, that's this quantity. Let's say it goes up by 40. Again, we want that value, so we're going to put plus 40. It says our price increased by 20. We want that value, so we're going to do plus 20. So our coefficient is going to be 40 divided by 20. It's going to be a positive number. It's going to be positive 2. Now, if it's a positive number, I'm positive that my substitutes are great teachers. Right? So positive numbers means they're substitute goods, which makes some logical sense, right? Price went up for hot dogs, so I went and bought more hamburgers instead. Okay? Now, what about hot dog buns? Well, we can look at hot dog buns as well. So for, again, we take the same coefficient. Our price went up by 20%, so that's my denominator, so plus 20. We're going to keep our values for these. And then my quantity decreased for hot dog buns by 40%. So that's negative 40. I pop out my equation here, and that's going to give me negative 2. Again, the value is actually important on these ones. Negative 2. So negative 2, that means these are complementary goods, right? A negative complement, an insult. So if the price of hot dogs goes up, then I'm going to buy fewer hot dog buns because I bought fewer hot dogs because they were more expensive. Okay, so again, using the cross price elasticity can very quickly identify substitutes and complements. The way this normally shows up is they'll give you an equation or they'll give you numbers or they'll even just give you a coefficient. You'll have to know that positive coefficient is a substitute, positive substitutes, and then negative complements. Okay, we have two optional or two questions here, just practice questions for you. So I just gave you the answer and I gave you the other answer. Okay, we're going to pretend that didn't happen. We have the price of inkjet printers increased by 25%, and the quantity of demanded of inkjet cartridges decreased by 50%. Calculate the cross price elasticity of demand and identify if the two types of goods are complements or substitutes. Okay, so we know that it's always quantity over price. It's QP every time. Now we keep our value on this and it says that our quantity demanded went up by or decreased by 50%. So it's negative 50. And it says our price went up by 25%. That's positive 25. That's going to kick out a coefficient of negative 2. Is negative 2 a substitute or a complement? Remember, negative complements, insults. So a negative complement here. So of course, these are negative 2 is our coefficient, and they are complementary goods, which if you just look at it, you would say, yeah, they're complementary inkjet printers and ink cartridges. Ink cartridges for inkjets and vice versa. Now, the next one says the price of Netflix increased by 40%, and the quantity demanded of Blu-ray discs, I don't think you guys even know what those are anymore, increased by 10%. Calculate the cross price elasticity of demand and identify if the two goods are complements or substitutes. So again, I know it's Q over P every single time. So I look at my quantity first. My quantity demanded increased by 10%. So it's going to be plus 10. My price increased by 40%. So that's going to be plus 40. That's going to kick out a number of positive 0.25. Positive 2.5, is that a substitute or a complement? I have a positive feeling about my substitute teacher. Positive substitutes is going to be a plus 0.25 and a substitute good, which makes sense. If Netflix goes up in demand or the price goes up in Netflix, people might buy more Blu-ray discs instead. Okay, there's another type of elasticity. It's called income elasticity. Just like cross price elasticity tells us complementary or substitute goods, income elasticity will tell us if a good is normal or inferior. And again, we use the value to determine that. Okay, so move this down a little bit. It's how sensitive a product is to a change in income. Really, what we care about is not how sensitive. We don't really care about the number. We care about the value. Is it positive or is it negative? And that's going to indicate to us what's happening. So if the coefficient is positive, it's normal, right? Whenever you go to the doctor and say everything's normal, that's a positive outcome, right? Positive, normal, normal, positive. If it's negative, it's inferior, right? It's clearly always negative to be inferior. I have a lifetime of learning that lesson. So coefficient is negative. It means we're talking about an inferior good. And you know what normal and inferior good is. A normal good means when I make more money, I buy more of that product. It's normal. An inferior good is I make more money, I buy less of that product. So a normal good is like, I don't know, a computer, right? Increase in money, people buy more computers. An inferior good is like, I don't know, ramen noodles. I have more money, I buy fewer ramen noodles because I don't need them anymore. I can buy more expensive food that tastes a little better and has more nutritional value, right? So that's an inferior good. The more money I have, the less I buy. Okay, so again, is percent change in quantity over, but instead of price is percent change in income because you're not given price. So similar, but different. Quantity over income. And again, we care about the value. Is it positive or is it negative? So let's say our income falls by 20%, but the quantity demanded of Taco Bell increases by 40%. Is this an inferior or negative good? So I plug it into my coefficient. My percent change in quantity is plus 40. Again, we care about that value for these ones, so plus 40. If my income falls by 20%, that's going to be negative 20 here. That's going to kick out a coefficient of negative 2. When it's negative, is that normal or inferior. Of course, it's inferior. Negative is always an inferior thing. So, income elasticity, when you have a negative coefficient, they're inferior goods. In other words, Taco Bell is an inferior good. Okay, so let's try out a couple of questions here. I'll make my face real small so I can answer these questions. If the income elasticity of demand for good X is negative, okay, income elasticity, remember, income we're looking at normal or substitute goods, is negative. What's that mean? What type of good is it? Is negative a positive thing or an inferior thing? The cross price elasticity of the demand between good X and good Y is negative. Cross price, remember, is complementary or substitutes. Is negative a substitute thing or a complementary thing? All right, yeah. So keep that in mind. Which of the following must be true of good X? Okay, take a second to answer that. The correct answer is D. X is an inferior good and is a complement to Y. How do I know this? Well, I just go through here and I know that income elasticity tells me if it's a normal or inferior good, right? It's based on my income. And they said it was negative. We know negative is always inferior. So I know X is an inferior good. I keep going. It says that cross price elasticity, which I know tells me if they're complement or substitute goods. Cross price elasticity of demand, sorry, between good X and good Y is negative. We know negative is always a complement. Negative complement or an insult right there. So negative is complement. I'm positive about substitutes. I'm negative about complements, right? So we have our complementary goods right there. Once I've labeled those two things, this becomes very easy. X is inferior good, and X and Y are complementary goods to one another. Bingo, bango. All right, let's keep going. Let's close this up. Following a decrease in the supply of oranges, the price of orange juice increased by 20%, which resulted in a 10% increase in the quantity of apple juice consumed. This implies that the cross price elasticity of demand between orange juice and apple juice is, well, we know cross price elasticity uses the same equation as quantity over price every time. Of course, we care about the positive or negative in this instant. So it says the price of orange juice increased by 20%. So plus 20 is going to be my denominator. And then it says that my quantity of apple juice consumed increased by 10%. So that's plus 10. That's going to give me 0.5. It's a positive number. Is a positive number a complement or a substitute? Remember, I'm always, always, always confident or positive about my substitutes. So plus zero point 0.5 is going to be your correct answer. And of course, they are substitute goods. There you go. Last one. This is the toughest one out of the bunch. If you can get this one, you're golden. The cross price elasticity coefficient of goods A and B is -5, and the income elasticity of good A is 2. Which of the following is true? And gives you a list. Give you a second to answer that question. Okay, you should have answered E. An increase in the price of A will decrease the demand for good B. What are we talking about here? Well, if the coefficient, cross price elasticity coefficient is -5, we know cross price tells us if they're complementary or if they are substitute goods. Remember, negative is always, always complementary goods. And the only way I get that negative number is if they're moving opposite directions, right? If one's going up while the other is going down. And so an increase in price A decreases the demand for good B. That would be a positive on the bottom. That would be a negative at the top. I'll kick out a negative answer, which will give me my my complementary goods there. And that's the correct answer. The second part, you didn't even need. Look at that, just getting in the way. Awesome. Okay. If that made sense to you, you can move on. If it didn't make sense to you, you can also move on. Try out that Khan Academy 2.5 cross price elasticity of demand, and I will see you in class. Finish up this section, and then we will have a quiz on this when we return next week. Peace to you and yours.